means it's time for a grim stream of Perilous adventure. No, I get it wrong every time. As soon as I say it, I realize I said it wrong. A grim stream of Perilous lore. It's right on the screen. I can see it. Let's say it. Still say it wrong. Welcome to Professional Casual Network's Warhammer lore stream, right? Where I'm here talking about stuff to do with the Warhammer world for fantasy, predominantly. Kind of mixing up things between Warhammer Fantasy Battle and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Something I have a lot of experience with both. So this week we're talking about elves, which will be fun because people typically have strong opinions about elves, one way or the other. So yeah, today we're going to be looking at. I'm going to talk about the three main kind of elves, what makes them different, how they're not really different, and why there are three types in a way where they live around the world. A little bit about each. In the future, we'll be doing episodes about each kind of elf, like individually and where they're from and all that, and a little bit more about them. Full disclosure, I played high elves, still have high elves for fantasy, still have them on square bases. No, that's chaos stuff behind me. I was looking to see if I had them in the phone, but it's mostly looks like plague marines and demons. But yeah, I got an army of high elves. Everybody hates it. it was real broken for a long time. Why is it still saying streaming Guardians of the Galaxy and Black Order? I've changed that twice. The title should be changed. But yeah, so I'm a little biased with high elves. I like them a lot. I had originally started to play them because they were something different from what I already had. I had started with Beastmen, of course. I went to Orcs and Goblins for a little while, and I wanted something that was more balanced than Beastmen, that didn't have any shooting, had a little bit of magic, and mostly combat, but I wanted something a little bit of everything, so I went with High Elves because they could do any phase of the game and do it well. And then this book came around, and everybody hated them to play against them because they got sweet, sweet rules. They were disgusting in combat. And then after that, they got toned down a little bit, but that still left a bad taste in people's mouths. But yeah, so Black Library focus this week. I want to take a look at I want to play something pretty. Yeah, they were fun to paint too. Not just dirty beastmen. Not lore focus. The Black Library of this week was looking about elves. Obviously, I tried to keep it themed. Won't be able to do that every time in the future, but I wanted to do something elf related, and I thought about like Defenders of Ulthuan, which would have worked just fine, but instead I decided to go with something a little bit different. The first Malus Darkblade book, Demon's Curse, which is pretty cool, by Dan Abnett. I think he did the one we talked about last week. What did I talk about last week? I already forgot. it's been a whole week. I don't remember what book I talked about last week, but Dan Abnett and Mike Lee, pretty cool. Kind of like a lot of people flocked to this because they thought, oh, like Drizzt Do'Urden in the Warhammer world. Kind of, he's a dark elf. They're not drow in this world. They're not like dark, like purpley skinned or anything like that. They just look like an elf. Anybody that's not an elf wouldn't be able to tell the difference, except based on what they wear, because the dark elves and the high elves dress very differently. But Malus is a dark elf noble who just kind of want to go do like adventuring a little bit. And he went off into the Chaos Wastes with some people, and he found this super sweet sword, and just happened to be possessed by a demon, and it kind of messes with him a lot. It's really cool. Real nice, just like high adventure story. Really cool stuff with some political stuff, like intrigue type things. Where am I Gaming Dad? Welcome. And just kind of it's cool adventure stuff. Dan Abnett is really, really good. The Dark Elves here are similar to like Dark Elves in D&D with like Menzo Baranzin and all the houses and whatnot, where they're constantly fighting against each other in their families and everything. So Malus Darkblade is this. It's the first of the Darkblade series. Is just like a young noble who's trying to move his way up, and he's just trying to take control of what he can. And I like how they kind of, I don't want to say it's based off of Drizzt, because I don't think it is, but it definitely has influences from that, because you think of any elf in like fantasy media outside of Legolas, most people know of Drizzt, who has the worst name to say ever. Most people call him Drizzit just because it's easier to say than Drizzt, but there's no other I. It's like Drizzt. Kind of a ridiculous name. Don't even get me started on his panther's name. Malus is kind of like a foil to that, where he's kind of like the typical dark elf, where he just has aspirations to go higher and higher and higher, and he will do anything to get there. And he's not like, I'm not like other of my kind, I'm good. It's like, no, he's awful. He's just really cool, and he surrounds himself with cool people, and he has a dinosaur. As you can see on the cover, he's got what's called a cold one, and his name is Spite. Way easier to say than Drizzt, Black Panther that's like Guahavna here or something weird like that. Spite, he's awful. He smells really bad because he's a cold one. Their scales are kind of like almost acidic. Dark elves have to like constantly apply this like salve to their hands and stuff to even touch the cold ones much. And Spite is a particularly vicious but intelligent version of his species, because the cold ones are typically dumb as rocks. Like in the battle, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, they literally had the rule stupid or stupidity. But Spite's pretty awesome. On the tabletop, Malus had a rule that Spite didn't suffer from stupidity, and if he joined a unit of Cold One Knights of a unit of Dark Elves riding these dinosaurs, that they would not suffer from stupidity. So it's pretty sweet. Let's see. Johnny Trash says, I wanted to start Hyo since 5th edition. Finally got Blood Island box set last year. We'll keep them in the back for the old world. Right? Yeah, that box set was awesome, too. Came with a noble riding a griffin. Sweet mod. I converted mine. What'd I do? I gave him a halberd, I think, or maybe a standard. I don't remember. That box set was great. Came with plastic Swordmasters that were really good. Came with plastic Lothern Seaguard that you had to convert until then that were really good models. That box set was great, and it came with Skaven, which is what Danny, I think we got 2 equivalent boxes of that for her to start a Skaven army, which next week we're hoping, if we can get somebody to watch the kids for just an hour, she's going to join me on here to talk about Skaven. She'll probably just sit next to me, and we'll just kind of scoot over and be like, blah, 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 blah. Or Tim might help us set up, help me learn how to use, our cameras that we use for the actual plays. I can see them right in front of me. So if you're watching Grim Podcast of Perilous Adventure on our Patreon, obviously we have cameras for that. I'm just really new to using things like OBS, so I might just, super low tech it and just have her sit next to me and just move the camera back a little bit. I don't know. Tim might show me tonight. He's coming over to watch some football because it's playoffs, if you're watching this in the future. And yes, I'm a nerd, but also like football. It's the only sport I get into at all. It's real funny on our Discord. If you join our Patreon, you can join our Discord. People talk crap about sports ball and stuff all the time, and they're often surprised that I like football, because most of the time nerds, D&D nerds and whatnot, typically aren't into stuff like that. But it's like, you could be nerdy about it in another way. I used to play fantasy football all the time, kind of fell out the last couple of years, but that's like nerds sport right there. Who scores what points and everything, and I used to be pretty decent at it, but maybe next year I'll get back into it. The one group that did it regularly kind of fell apart, so just like any other nerd thing, it just stops working after a while, right? But yeah, Demon's Curse I recommend. There's quite a few of these in the series. I forget just how many. I was looking at it yesterday, refreshing myself on these things. I think there's 5 or 6 of the Darkblade series. I read the first few of them. Again, they were all Tim's. Not that Tim, my brother Tim, who got me into this. He played Dark Elves for a while. He really liked Dark Elves. He hated the cold ones. He loved fielding them, but every time they would fail stupidity, I would shoot 1 or 2 of his cold one knights, and they'd run away from panic, and it was great. I loved it. It would make him so mad, which obviously isn't the nicest thing, but, I'm the older brother, so I have to try to put him in his place whenever I can. I told him about the stream today, and I was like, hey, I'm going to talk about elves, so it'd be great if you jumped on for the chat to talk, kind of help me with Dark Elf stuff maybe. And he was like, I just got off of work. It was a super long day. And I was like, yeah, just go rest. It's fine. I understand. He works in a kitchen, so, it's like sun up to sundown. He's exhausted by the end, so maybe he'll watch it on YouTube and he'll be like, yo, quit talking about me. Well, I feel like I do every episode because he's the one that got me into Warhammer in the first place, so thank you, Tim. All right, so, and brain stop for a second there. Lore focus of the week. Elves. Right? I feel like I'm forgetting something. I gotta look at my notes like I do every week to remind myself. What do I do on this show? Oh, I forgot about what's gaming. Not much, really. I mean, not much out of the ordinary. Same thing. We finally got to record Grim Podcast of Perilous Adventure again for the first time in weeks. Usually we go every other week we record a couple episodes of Kapapa, and then the next weekend we record a couple episodes of Lost Omens. Between Christmas and New Year's, and some of us got sick. We had to quarantine for COVID type stuff. We hadn't recorded since before Christmas, and it was like, oh my God. So we finally got together Friday, this past Friday night, like we usually do, and we tried to schedule to play from like 8 until we have 2 episodes done. And we didn't start until we were all together. JB was actually on time, which I don't think he's going to be watching this, but JB's never on time. He also has to drive like 45 minutes to get here to play, but, he's dedicated. But we didn't start recording until like 9, and by the time we were done with the first episode, it was like, we're old and tired and got to be done. And then I think I went to bed because I knew I was going to get up with Felix the next morning because it was Danny's birthday, which belated happy birthday. Obviously, I told her that already, but yesterday was her birthday. Danny and JB and Tim just sat in the basement chatting until like almost 1 a.m. And it's like that's so late anymore for us. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so it's just, oh my goodness. So we finally got to play that again. It was awesome. We're doing what we call a marathon tomorrow with Martin Luther King Day. We're going to be shooting for 4 or 5 episodes, which is super exciting. It's really fun to do it. Last time we did that were episodes like 31 to 34, which was when things in Bogenhofen really started to take off, so we really got to get into it and just, actually play like a more typical session where we were down here for like 6 hours and actually played like that whole time instead of playing for like just 2 hours and doing what we need to do kind of thing, because we typically record after the kids go to bed, and we do it on a Friday, so it's the end of the week. Everybody's tired from working all week, and getting 2 episodes in usually takes till like 11, and it's like, we gotta go to bed. Because again, pretty much all of us have kids that we gotta get up with early in the morning anyway, so. But it works out as long as we can get those marathons in once in a while to really get ahead. So when people ask me questions about the stream, and I'm like, or about the game, about a Grim Podcast of Perilous Adventure, I'm like, wait, so what has come out at this point? I have to think about, what did we record that I don't want to tell people yet? What have I edited so I don't say the wrong thing? And then what has actually come out, which is all in different stages. So like episode 35 just dropped on Thursday. And then I'm currently editing episode 38, and we just recorded episode 39. So we're not as far ahead as I'd like, but after tomorrow we should be, hopefully we'll do 40, 41, 42, 43 at least. Maybe even to 44 if we really don't mess around too much. Just talking about whatever, catching up, because it's been forever. It's only been a couple days, so we shouldn't have to have all that catching up. Other than that, with what's gaming, the Power Phase on Monday nights on this Twitch, 7 p.m., the Monday Night Crisis fights. That's right. Oh yeah, the Power Phase, playing Marvel Crisis Protocol. I haven't been able to be on that in a while. Again, with people having the quarantine and whatnot, we had a 2-week hiatus. Tim and Chuck got back to it last week because Chuck is getting back to work. His job is getting him back in more than he was, unfortunately, which really sucks that he's going to have to work Monday nights for the foreseeable future, which I feel really bad because he really enjoys, the Power Phase, and he does a great job, and trying to kind of figure out how to fill that role, that spot now, because I can't really do it every week. Like it's already a lot. It's already a lot that we do for the network, and every Monday night would be a bit much. So it's kind of figuring out. We're kind of not rebranding, but we're looking at scheduling for that. But really excited. Tomorrow I get to play She-Hulk. Finally, she was delivered a bit late in our area. So Charlie was real sad. Big Chuck, shouldn't call him Charlie. He's Big Chuck on the network. Was really wanting to use She-Hulk when she first came out, but it was delayed a week, so he didn't get to use her. So I will be taking A-Force for a spin. Danny designed my list for me, using what was available. Which is pretty much everything. There's some listed in the affiliation that aren't even out yet. So I'm taking She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, Wasp, Valkyrie, and Black Widow, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. At 19 threat. So that's really exciting to try She-Hulk for the first time. She looks like a powerhouse. She looks terrifying, kind of like she should. But she's the same level as Hulk, and we've all kind of agreed better. Our Patreon, we have... Wait, did I roll wild? I think it's going to be a monthly vlog about Marvel Crisis Protocol. There we go. I can't say the names of these things, apparently. Where the latest episode came out last week on the patreon.com/professionalcasual, where Big Chuck, Tim, and I talked about She-Hulk. We had her card got leaked ahead of time. We talked about what we thought she'd be able to do on the table. We talked about the cards that came with her, and excited to try out things. I don't remember much of anything that we talked about, but I'm looking forward to just chatting about it in general, or using her and seeing how it goes. That's about it for gaming stuff. Other than that, I've gotten back into reading Ninja Turtle stuff. My mom got me a sweet hardcover of the original run of Ninja Turtles from like '84 that I read. Really cool. And I've got the first few trades of the most recent ongoing, which is kind of like the most official one right now, because Kevin Eastman is one of the writers back to it, which is super cool. And it's really good. I remember started in 2015. And I started reading it when it first came out. I got the first few issues, and then I stopped. I think at the time I just didn't have any money, and it was like, because that would have been before I have my current job, and it was just like, I got to cut back on some of my comics. I just can't. And like, I think I was down to like just Uncanny X-Men or just X-Men Gold or whatever it was at the time. So I had to cut out the Turtles and just never got back into the series, because after a while it was like, well, now it's like 50 issues in, and I don't have the money to catch up. And then it was like, now we're 100 issues in, and now it's like, all right, I'm catching up now because I really like it. Let's see, Johnny Trash is it's like trying to paint after a work day. Yeah, seriously. Usually I fall asleep while bringing the kids to bed. If I wake up again, my fine motor skills are rubbish. On the nights I don't have to correct students' homework. Oh, you're a teacher too? Very cool. Yeah, I don't teach. I don't grade at home anymore. I'm not gonna do it. I used to bring it home and do it here and there, and it's just gotten to the point where it's like, nope, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna grade it at work. Maybe if I have to stay late a little bit, that's one thing. I'm not gonna bring it home because I'm not gonna do it anyway. It'll just sit in my bag, and then I'll just bring it back to school the next day or whatever. So good on you for actually grading at home. Danny doesn't either. Everything we grade is at work. I've changed how I do grades anyway, but that's a totally different topic. You're not here to listen to me talk about my job. Not my real job. This is like my pretend job. We were joking the other day about Lily asked what we were doing. And I said, oh, I got to go work for the job that we don't get paid for. Maybe someday that'd be super cool if it actually was like a job. But right now it's for fun and like building up the community that we're trying to do, which is going super strong in the Discord. Such a great place. If you want to talk about nerd stuff with people or just stuff with a bunch of great people, we keep it. I want to say we keep it a friendly place, but like we don't like actively moderate it for that kind of stuff because people are just cool to each other in there. Even when they argue, it's all in good nature. Like they're actually arguing about French fries the other day. French fries, because we got guys in Europe. So do you call them chips or fries, and that kind of thing, and crisps? We call potato chips. And how it's done and how it's done right. We got a guy in there who's a chef, so he knows it. And Dagna, he's the one that wrote the menu for Grim Podcast The Perilous Adventure for the Golden Trout. That was awesome. People loved it. Just a great place that You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. Even you get access to the Discord debating. That's fair. Yeah, Bastion says debating, not arguing. I mean, we all agree that fries are great. We just call them different things slightly, and the best way to prepare them. Lately, our go-to is the air fryer. Throw them in there for a while, and they're not greasy, and they're nice and crispy and good to go. All right, let's go. Let's talk about the lore focus for this week. That's what people are here for, right? So talking about elves. We got basically 3 varieties. I'm going to hold these books. They're not the 3 kinds of books. I played High Elves, so I got these. These are my main sources for this week. Sadly, my older edition book got flattened by one of the kids, and now it's got this big crease in it, which makes me real upset. Which I don't know why. This book is from... Where's the cover? 2007. This book's 13 years old. I haven't used it in a game since, this one came out. And I haven't played Warhammer Fantasy in a while anyway. Let go. Taylor's been bugging me to get back in it. This is 2012, so I haven't played with that other book since at least 2012. But Taylor, Throwlash Gaming, who's on Lost Omens, has been getting on my case about playing Fantasy again. And I'm like, dude, just tell me a time, we'll do it. And then he doesn't. So I put the onus on him to set it up. So then it makes me look better. But yeah, so elves, super cool. So we got 3 varieties. Like a lot of settings, there's not just elves. We've got high elves, which is kind of like what they all came from in a way. All elves are the same race, really. It's just kind of where they live and how and in their culture. So like the high elves were just the elves. They called themselves the Aesir, Asur, and they lived in this west across the Great Ocean from the Old World, in their nation of Uthulan. Uthulan? I'm going to say it a couple different ways as we go, probably. And they've been around pretty much forever. Not forever. They were created by the Old Ones like everything else. They're just one of the many mortal races. They just are nearly immortal. Their lives are so long that it's rumored that they're immortal. Nobody really knows except the elves. Unfortunately, because of the world they're in, most of them die in battle anyway. But there's one race that have settled in a couple different parts of the world. So we have the High Elves, which are the ones that still live in Uthulan and other. They have some other like ports and things around the world, but they all part of that nation. We have the Wood Elves, or the Asrai, I believe they're called. Or they call themselves to kind of separate themselves from the High Elves of Uthuan, Bastion says. We have a lot of debates about pronunciations. He's going to get real mad next week when we talk about Skaven. But the Wood Elves are just what they sound like. They live in the woods. They mostly wear like leathers and things like that. And a big thing that separates them from the Aesir is they worship Kurnos and Arya. Well, it's different now. Getting confused with AOS lore a little bit, where Ariel the Ever Queen, she's still part of Uthuan and whatnot, but the Wood Elves kind of venerate her as well. But like Kurnos and Orion, that's the other one, and Orion are their big gods. Kurnos is the god of the hunt, and Orion as well. He had a really cool model back in the day. He looked kind of like an elf satyr, but he was real big. He was like twice the size of an elf, and he had a couple wolves with him. And he was really cool to look on the battlefield. Of what you could have a unit of just him and his 2 wolves, and it was really cool. But yeah, and then the last ones are the Dark Elves, or this is one that the pronunciation is kind of weird. I say Drukai. I've been told at different times it's Drukai because there are 2 I's at the end, Druchii. At first I called them Druchi, which now just sounds ridiculous. So the Drukai, they call themselves, the Dark Elves. They live in an area called Nagaroth, which is kind of like the equivalent of North America in the Warhammer world. Boom, there it is. So we see Uthulan is this large island in the middle of the Great Ocean. That's kind of like a upside down U. It looks kind of like an O, but it's not connected at the very bottom. There is the Straits of Lothar in there that cut right through it. So it's kind of like a big O. In the middle there is a very, very important island we'll talk about in a little bit. But Nagaroth, if you look a little to the west of Utholin, you'll see Nagaroth, and it's a big, large continent that's kind of like the equivalent of North America. If you're to look at this map, kind of like our world, which obviously is very heavily inspired by, mostly the same, except there's no Australia. There's a little bit of the island, the Lost Isles of, I can't remember what it's called. I can't read it on here. That sort of is like Australia, but has absolutely nothing about it that I know of. But Nagaroth's a pretty cool place. It's basically a winter-bladed land. It's very close to the Chaos Wastes. Not everywhere is it always snowy, but a lot of it is. A lot of it is mountainous. It's very dangerous. There's things like cold ones that live there. Pretty cool stuff. And then the Wood Elves, they kind of live all over the place. I'm going to see if I can kind of zoom in on this a little bit. If we look at the old world, we see Bretonnia, get that kind of in the center there. Bretonnia there has like the largest collection of Wood Elves that we know of in a place called Athelloren, which is a large, large forest that is completely dominated by these Wood Elves. Bretonians are like not allowed in there. Sometimes they kind of make friends, but most of the time it's like, you walk in our woods, you dead. Not okay. Some places in the Empire, there's the Laurelorn Forest. I think I mentioned a little bit in the Empire episode where there are Wood Elves, and there's others scattered about, but most of the Wood Elves are congregated in Athelloren. I'm going to bring this back down a little bit, just to give us an idea of where these things are. And like I said, the elves really are all the same, but a Wood Elf doesn't live in Nagaroth, and a High Elf, oops, moving something else here in accident. A High Elf is not going to live in Athelloren. Otherwise, they're kind of the same. So big thing with the elves, why there are 3 different varieties, was something called the Sundering, which was like a giant civil war between the elves, which we can go into a lot of detail, but that might even save that for an episode in the future to really dive deep into this. This map, Bastion, is from the Interbutts. I don't know. I think it's the same one. I think it's the one that came with the White Dwarf issue 300. Really, really sweet map. On the other side was a cool poster of Grombrindral, the White Dwarf. But I just did a Google search for the Warhammer World Map and picked the best one that had a decent resolution that I could use on here. I think it's the one they use on one of the wikis as well. But it's a good one. But the Sundering was a time. So with the Elf Society, they have the Phoenix King is their leader, like their emperor, sort of. And to become a Phoenix King, you had to walk through the Everflame unharmed. And if you did, you were worthy to be the king. And the first king was Anirion. Oops, losing my thoughts already here. I just looked at this yesterday to really remind myself, and now I'm forgetting immediately. Yeah, Anirion, that's what I thought, was the first Phoenix King, and he was like a almost godly elf. He was super powerful. He had some sweet stuff, but they had a lot of issues with demons. This was way, 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 way back, like almost 5,000 years before the Empire. Humans might not have been around yet, and if they were really tribal and primal. And the elves had this huge empire that spanned most of the world. They were all over the place. And during this time, this fight, they mostly against Slaneshi demons, if I remember correctly, they're having a real tough time with it, but there was this artifact that the elves had called the Widowmaker, which was this superpower, the Sword of Cain, the god of murder. And it was like, you don't use this, you can use this sword, but if you do, it's going to ruin you forever, but it's the best thing in the world, literally. And eventually, finally, Anirion says, well, we're going to lose if I don't use the Widowmaker. So he goes and gets it, kind of like Sword of Stone, pulls it out of a thing, wrecks this demon. I think its name is Nakai, is like his like arch enemy. No, I'm not seeing that name on here. I can't find it that quick. And he's able to smite this demon and whatnot, and they're good to go, basically. And like things kind of go all right for a while, and then I think it's Anirion's son. Oof, I didn't read enough before I started this up. There was another high elf named Malekith. which of course is taken right from Norse mythology. And Malekith wanted to become the Phoenix King. Yes, it was his son. Found it. Ha. Trying to read real quick. The son of Anarion and Morathai. Morathai, I've heard a couple different ways to say that one too. Morathai, who was kind of like the queen, basically, Anarion's wife. I mean, the elves live so long that they don't typically marry forever, kind of thing. But Malekith was like the obvious choice, and it was like, well, he's going to become the next king, obviously. But he was rivals with Belshazzar, who it's just got a cool name. Malekith goes through the Everflame after Anarion dies, mostly because of the sword, and he is burned horribly and like is disfigured. And they're like, "Well, you can't be the Phoenix King. You got burnt, nerd." So he's mad, and Morathai is mad because she wanted to stay in power as well with her son leading. And Belshazzar becomes the new Phoenix King. He walks through, no problem. And Morathai and Malekith are like, no, this isn't cool, bro. So they start a civil war between those that were like part of their realm that was called Nagaraith. And there was this huge war that lasted a long time, and a lot of elves died. And eventually what happened was Morathai was a super powerful sorceress. Malekith was also a very powerful wizard. And with their spells, it's called the Sundering, because Uthlin broke away from the mainland. This one shows it a little bit better. I thought that map showed Nagaroth in the corner. So we can see that Uthlin is clearly an island, but the northwest coast of Uthlin used to be connected to the continent of Nagaroth, and it broke off in this war and was sundered from the continent, and now is a floating island. But there are a group of elves, of sages, in the middle of Uthlin here. I'll blow this one up next. At the Great Vale, at that island in the center of Uthlin, and they have been there since the time of the Sundering, keeping the island afloat, all of Uthlin afloat. Otherwise, it would sink rather quickly. I'm not sure exactly how long, but like probably within days. And that basically they're just kind of sitting around in a circle, having been doing this ritual for centuries. This was, thousands of years ago. Pretty cool. When I first started thinking about what I was going to do for this episode, I saw this particular map in the newer, this is the 8th edition Codex, or not Codex, that's the wrong game, Army book for High Elves. Really cool map, and I was like, well, I can just do it like the Empire episode and go over all the different basically provinces of Uthlin, talk about how Tracians are different from those from Safari or Tiranoc and the Dragon Knight, the Dragon Princes of Calador and whatnot. And I was like, wait, no. Slow down. That can be a whole future episode when we talk about just High Elves. This one will be about all of the elves. So Uthlin broke away from Nagaroth, and we can see up in the north there is a place called Nagaraith, which looks a bit different. It's not as green. It's kind of a wasteland. Which is basically more of the continent that stayed on. We can see on Uthlin is this ring of mountains, and Nagaraith is kind of this area where things don't really grow as well. There are still elves from that area that are high elves, but they're often seen, even now, are still looked at with some suspicion that, like, are you really high elves or are you dark elves kind of thing? Are you really Acer or are you Drukai? I keep trying to say Drukari because that's the 40k dark elf equivalent. Drukai. But the Nagaraith are like masters of like, they're basically like ninjas that are masters of stealth and sneakiness and whatnot. Like I said, I'll go into that in more detail in a high elf specific episode in the future. So I'm going to shrink this down. We'll keep that up for now, but not totally blocking my face. But yeah, so Civil War, High Elves and Dark Elves have been at war since. Malekith has been the leader of the Dark Elves from that time. Morathai's been there kind of doing her own thing. They worship Cain openly, the elven god of murder. Pretty sure the worship of Cain is illegal on Uthlin because it's so associated with the Dark Elves and just not accepted. I mean, worshiping the god of murder is probably not a great thing anyway, but they do a lot of sacrificing and blood and whatnot. There are rumors that Cain is just a different aspect of Khorne, maybe with a little Tzeentch thrown in because he's a little sneaky. But yeah, love that stuff. And the Wood Elves, they're not like, I hate you so much to the others, but they just kind of exist separately. They just kind of they want to do their own thing. They just want to stay in the woods. They want to, hang out with the dryads and their sprites and whatnot and worship Kurnos the way they do. And they just want to be left alone. That's it. They're kind of like the Hulk. Just leave them alone. You won't have a problem is what, kind of how they feel. So Wood Elves are pretty cool. I think Tim, my brother, played them for a while. I know Taylor did for a bit, and I've got a good amount of experience fighting against Wood Elves. They were always kind of a pain, but they were never like the best thing. Dark Elves definitely had their time. Oh, there was a period where everything in the Dark Elves had a rule called Hatred in the tabletop game, where they could just reroll all their hits, which was gross. It was so bad. Even like their 7-headed hydras with all their bitey mouths could reroll all their hits. It was awful. But then the High Elves got a rule where they had always strikes first on everything, and it said regardless of the weapon they wield, and they were allowed, if their initiative was equal to or higher than their opponents, they could also reroll their hits, which meant they were going to hit you first, and they're going to reroll pretty much all the time always, and they were just better, and it was kind of fun. I was not allowed to play High Elves for a while with those rules because it was just too good. But yeah, the Dark Elves, we played a lot in like 6th and 7th edition, and then 8th edition, the Dark Elves came out a little late. I think we were too into 40k stuff at that point. I only remember playing against Tim's 8th edition Dark Elves a couple of times, and I remember they were a little watered down. They were still pretty good, but they weren't like gross. They weren't awful. My favorite memory ever of playing, I guess I got two, both against him. And the first one was I was playing with Danny Skaven. We're playing at a local game store, like not Bearded Dragon at the time for some reason. Forget why. We're down in a place called Jupiter Games. And he had a unit of like 20 Blackguard, real expensive elite heavy infantry with halberds and whatnot. And I was playing Skaven, so all my guys were dirt cheap and terrible. And I had a magic user, and he cast the spell Scorch, which dropped a 3-inch template, just a circle, this big. But what was disgusting about it is, unlike most things that had a template, you didn't scatter it all. You just plopped it on top of the unit, and anything touched by that template took a strength 4 hit, which isn't that bad unless you're playing against elves that are all toughness 3, unless it's Malekith. He's the only one that was toughness 4. So that meant I got like 19. I think I hit almost every model in the unit, and it was on a 4-up or a 3-up on a D6. They were dead because I think it was strong enough to get through his armor, or maybe he had a 6-up save, which was basically nothing. And I remember killing like half the unit, and then they were useless at that point mostly, or they fled. And he was so mad because it was like we played probably 2,000 or 2,400 points, and that unit was probably 300 or 400 points of it, and it was just one spell, boom, wasted that unit. Gross. My other favorite time was just kind of funny to me. We were playing a variant called Storm of Magic, which was like had a bunch of new rules for Magic, made Magic way better, had a lot new spells that you could play only in Storm of Magic because they were game breaking otherwise. So I was playing, I think it was a Shadow Wizard who had a spell, I can't remember what it's called anymore, where you could move terrain, which was a totally new thing. Nothing could do that before. You could move a terrain piece. Excuse me. And Tim had his Dark Elves, and he had a Hydra, and it was terrifying. I did not want to fight this Hydra because I think whatever I had in that area of the table was like nothing could take that Hydra. So in that, people that know about Warhammer Fantasy battle, you had to line up your fights. So like you charged first thing in the turn before any other movement happened, unlike the games now. In 40k or Age of Sigmar, you move, and then later in the turn you can charge. So you had to set it up ahead of time. So he had his Hydra in a perfect spot. He was going to charge me next turn. There wasn't too much I could do about it because I hadn't been able to kill it with magic and shooting yet. Because I had a plan. I used this spell to move terrain, and I took this like chapel and just went boop between my guys and the Hydra. And he just looked at me and he goes, "Are you serious?" And he was so mad because it was like, now he couldn't charge because there's this big piece of blocking terrain in the way, so he had to try to go around it. And so that took a couple turns to move around it, and then I could just move it again with this spell that he wasn't able to stop. He hated it. We decided not to, I think we outlawed that spell, or just We didn't play much Storm of Magic after that, but it was really funny at the time. Kind of felt bad, but loved it at the same time. It was pretty funny. Speaking of Tim, so he first got into Warhammer because of dwarves. Taylor, Throwlash there, also plays dwarves. These guys love dwarves so much. So the reason I get crap for playing High Elves is because of the War of the Beard, which I know Bastion requested a little bit more about. The dwarves, Tim and Taylor refer to it as the War of Vengeance. Elves call it the War of the Beard because it's like, what's the big deal? It was a beard. So this is after the Sundering. Elves and dwarves got along for the most part. They basically they kept their relationship amicable for trade mostly. They weren't huge fans of each other, but they weren't in open war or anything like that. Malekith wanted to mess with everybody. He was like, we can't just fight the High Elves head on. They're just too powerful. There's too many of them compared to the Dark Elves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get them in a big fight with somebody else, so then we can sneak in the back and have victory that way. So Malekith sends out some Dark Elf raiders to attack a dwarf caravan, but the dwarves don't know the difference between Dark Elves and High Elves. They're elves. They don't care about a difference. And Malekith made sure they were wearing the garb of High Elves. They had trinkets of High Elves. They left things behind. Yeah, Dark Elves are very sneaky elves, Danny. And they attacked this caravan and killed all the dwarves. So then when other dwarves found it, they found some dead elves, and they found these things that were clearly of High Elf make. And they were like, whoa, this is not cool. Why would you attack this caravan? So they were like, I thought we were okay. Thought things were cool. So they send some emissaries to the elves, and the time it was Kalidor II was the Phoenix King. Make sure I'm saying that correctly. I'm pretty sure I remember that because I was specifically trying to look up the War of the Beard. Kalidor II, the son of Kalidor, the Dragon Prince, was a bit of a hothead. So they kind of went back and forth a little bit with like emissaries and envoys and whatnot. And finally the dwarves were like, "No, you're gonna pay us back for this. Like, we're dwarves. We hold grudges. You stole this stuff from us, so you owe it back to us." And the elves were like, "No, you're ridiculous." They shaved the envoy's beard off. They shaved his beard and sent him back. And the dwarves were like, "Hell no, this is not okay." So started the War of the Beard. So they started attacking elves, and the elves were like, "Yeah, you guys can't take a joke? Come on." And it's just a little bit of, to me, I see it as a combination of the elves not understanding dwarf culture and how important the beard is and not caring. Because it's, we were talking to Discord earlier. I think Bastion was asking what I was talking about today, and I said elves, and I got to read what Taylor said because it was just so perfect and so Taylor as a dwarf player, which is funny because he played Wood Elves for a while, but what he said as a dwarf player. Let me see. I can't find it now because I forgot what channel it was in because we have a lot of channels. Should be in Warhammer. There we go. He says, elves are pompous know-it-alls who think they're the old one's personal gifts to the world, even though they've never done a hard, honest day's work in their life. It's like totally unprovoked. He just starts going in on this because he loves high elves. It was so good. And I was like, yep, that's one reason why I'm talking about him today. Perfect. So it was so Taylor, so perfect. And it was just, so back to the War of the Beard, the dwarves and the elves start fighting in earnest. They're having this long war, and it's like years long, decades long, eventually hundreds of years long. And finally, they have, like, the war spills over into other places. I forgot where I was going with it. Oh, and eventually Kalidor II himself enters the fray, and he's like, I'm not gonna just, have my people do this. He like overcommits to the point where other, his like counselors thought that he was doing too much and leaving Uthlin too unprotected from the Dark Elves, exactly what Malekith wanted. And they go and they fight for a long time, and it's the fourth siege of Tor Alessi, I think. Finally, the High King of the dwarves at the time, Gotrek. Did we get his other name? Is it just Gotrek? I think it's just King Gotrek. It doesn't say like another name. Nope, just Gotrek. So the High King Gotrek and Kalendor II face off one-on-one. Kalendor loses. He gets dead. Gotrek takes his helm, the helm of the Phoenix King, and he's like, "Yep, this is good as repayment. Let's go." And the dwarves just peace out, and the elves are like, "Well, crap, that was a huge waste. This dude was an idiot." And then Caradriel becomes the next Phoenix King. And so this war, it was like done at that point, but dwarves and elves have long memories, both races, and still just hate each other. There's no open war at at this time that I know of, depending on what what time frame, what calendar you're looking at. But it's just like dwarves and elves do not get along. Typically, they're not fans of each other, and this is why, because Phoenix King Kalendor II decided as a joke to shave off a dwarf's beard and send him back. That dwarf, by the way, had to take the Slayer Oath, which we'll talk about when we talk about dwarves. But that mostly covers it for elves. They look like, an elf you would expect to look like in a fantasy setting. They're tall, they are lithe, they're often described as, and they have like this otherworldly grace about them where like the greatest human ballerina would look like, arthritic toad compared to a decent elf dancer kind of thing. Like they are graceful beyond any reckoning of humans. They do have certainly a haughtiness to them. Pretty much all the races, they think they're better than everybody because in a lot of ways they are. Physically, mentally, they are superior to a lot of the other races, especially dwarves being short and stocky and blah, blah, blah. Like the elves are going to be faster and more nimble. They are craftsmen and artisans extraordinaire. Because of their long lives, they can perfect crafts. A lot of elves will perfect one thing and then just kind of pick up a new hobby until they mastered that as well. A great example, the sword masters of Hoeth, who are scholars and sword masters. They are some of the greatest warriors in the world, wielding giant great swords that are as tall as they are. So like they're super strong and super smart and super fast and whatnot, and they're better in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that just as a high elf player, just like in a way they were designed that way by the old ones. They were supposed to be like the one of the dominant species on the planet, but they kept fighting themselves, like happens all the time, especially in Warhammer, right? So they were humans have kind of taken over the Warhammer world in a way, not so much as other settings. Just mostly the old world is human dominated because of their ingenuity and engineering and whatnot. But the elves have Uthlin and they have Nagaroth, and they have a few forests, and then they have some towers around that are kind of like military bases around the world of Uthlin. But they're like a shadow of their former glory kind of thing, which is pretty typical for elves in settings. Otherwise, they are the dominant species. But yeah, so it's pretty cool stuff. I like the elves. Again, it mostly came down to how they looked and how they played on the table is why I played them in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I've never played an elf in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, mostly because I've only ever played a couple characters. I've almost always been the GM. I played a Snotballer who became an initiate of Sigmar, and I played a Kislevite in JB's game when we started doing the Thousand Thrones. I can never remember what the name of the career is. The guy with the handgun and the halberd that he would use as like a stand for the handgun. And then there must have been one other character. No, that was a Stompballer. Never mind. So I think I've only played in 2 campaigns ever as the player. Everything else I've run. So that's why I love things like, I really appreciate Danny running the Lost Omens podcast, so I actually get to play a character. I love my character in that. Brennan, he's a Yusoki investigator, and he's super fun to play. I get some crap people say that it's just me turned up a little bit with like I play him. He has 18 intelligence, so I play him as he's smart and he knows it, and he lets everybody else know it, and he corrects people whenever he gets a chance because his whole thing is he's always seeking the truth. And apparently I do that, or I feel like I've gotten better about it. There's certain things that I feel the need to correct people on. I think I've gotten better about it, but it's all about people's perceptions of things, so maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, so I like to. It's nice to actually get a chance to play. I'd love to in the future do like a bonus show or something. If somebody else runs WFRP, I'd like to do some other one shots or small campaigns like Rough Days, Hard Nights. Rough Nights, Hard Days. I can never remember what that one is called. Things like that kind of thrown together in like a smaller campaign as like bonus stuff where I could actually play. That'd be pretty sweet. Yes, Danny says I'm a fact person. That's what Lily calls me. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, it's my job. I teach science. I dabble. I deal in facts all day. That's what I do. And stuff like this is so much fun because it's like facts of a different world. So it's just fun to talk about. So it seems to me onto the last part of our show where we talk about like viewer questions and things, and hopefully interaction in the chat last week was really awesome. With that, there were some other things that people asked about on our Discord. If I could find it again. Oh, Bastion asked, with Enemy and Shadows coming to an end on a Grim Podcast of Perilous Adventure, we are near the end of the first book of the Enemy Within campaign. It says, will you be jumping straight into Death in the Reich, and will there be elves? He said he's trying to keep it relevant to the topic, which doesn't have to be. Questions here are good. Will there be elves? I don't know. How many elves are in the old world? Like 8? They might come across one. I'm not going to say whether that'll happen or not. Will we have a player character elf? Maybe someday. We roll for it, so there's only like a 2% chance you roll an elf. I think it's a 99 is a wood elf and 100 is a high elf. To do that far away from the mic so it doesn't pick up me swallowing the water. But yeah, I feel like Bastion's tried to ask me this question a couple times in different ways in the Discord, and basically I'm not going to answer it. I'm not going to tell you what's coming because I want it to always be a surprise, right? I could say, yes, we're going straight into Death on the Reich, and we're going to just roll right into it. Or I could say, no, we're going to go to the side and we're going to do, we'll run Night of Blood at a coaching inn on the Bogan. But I don't want to do that because then you know what's coming, and I want it to always be a surprise. Because I never know what the players are going to do anyway. I could set up something like Night of Blood, and they might just ignore it and just do something else. So I don't want to say, yeah, we're going to do this, and then they have the players decide something different because they don't know what's coming. They don't know these things. They don't know about Night of Blood. None of them are going to be looking up adventures or anything like that. That's just not how they roll. I know there's some, I think it was Luffy in the Discord was telling us a horror story about a player at a table who would like look up monster stats in like D&D type games as they were fighting, and then be like, no, this has an AC of 19, I hit it, and then the GM's like, well, no, I changed things because I know you look things up, and the person got so mad they left the game for good, and it was like, that's just kind of crappy. Like, that's not how you play this game. Not to me, at least. Maybe there's people that enjoy, like, there's some people that enjoy that and like looking at it as they do it, but using that information that way. I feel like, to me, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. WFRP is different anyway because it's not like we're getting in 4 fights per normal session, right? Like when there's a fight in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you better hope it's for a good reason because someone's going to take some lasting damage or might have to use a fate point, which means that just decreases the time they're going to be alive. Or there's a demon, so they get too much corruption, so you're going to get mutated, which again just decreases the amount of time they're going to be around. Right, Bastion says just build walls around them so they have one way to go. Like literally, so they have to go that way? They could. I mean, we're running a written campaign, so it's not like there's no railroad, right? The enemy within campaign is not written as a sandbox. excuse me, there are points where that gets more like that, like when the party gets to Bogenhofen in Enemy in Shadows, it opens up a bit, but until then it's like getting them to Bogenhofen is the adventure in a way, and then it's just trying to find things out as these things happen. And I want to keep it rolling that way, where they're going at this point, you know, things are happening. If they're going from A to B and some event happens on the way that kind of steers them in a certain direction, that's the way it's going to go, right? At this point I'm getting to where I can kind of anticipate what they're going to do, but there's always curveballs thrown in. Entirely true, Bastion. They can't climb walls. That was awful. They just kept failing their climb checks because none of them were very well trained in that, but they got out of there eventually. But yes, I want to keep it as free-flowing and non-committal as possible. If we have things already recorded that people have had questions about that are coming up, I will give more vague answers, but I'm not going to ever say like, oh yeah, in 3 weeks this is going to happen, because I feel like that takes the mystery out of it for a lot of people. And I wouldn't want that for me, so I'm just going to kind of assume that other people don't want that. Curveballs definitely equals lucky. Yes, Tim... I don't know where he comes up with half of the crap he comes up with. I'm just like, what? Like, spoiler alert, if you haven't listened up to like episode 31 or so, I think this happens 32, something like that, of Grim Podcast of Perilous Adventure. Skip ahead a little bit, but why in the world did he go back into that jail cell? I was like, wait, you're going to do what? And he was like, yeah, we're going to go back in. They have all my stuff. And I was like, all right, well, found out they're going to hang you. Okay, like, I kind of punished him for going back because he had an out in the book to find that little passageway, and he didn't take it, so he got hanged. He had a fate point, though. There are people that were, like, legitimately worried, and then later messaged or commented places, and they're like, oh, yeah, he had a fate point. Forgot about that. Because they're not the ones playing the game, right? Yeah, he is in soup stuff for that chick's address, and he didn't get it back. Too bad. He'll never know, right? I mean, I can't. I don't go back and watch the videos of it because I play the game. Obviously, I edit it and then I listen to it with my daughter in the car. She likes listening to it as like when we're driving to school and whatnot. So I already get it 3 times. I don't watch the video. Also, I should here and there to see what kind of things, but like. I'm sure my face when he did that was ridiculous because I was just like, what are you doing? I couldn't believe it. Like, you know you're going to die, right? And then he gets mad at me because he doesn't have enough fate points. Well, stop doing stupid stuff. Just kidding. Love you, Tim. Brings so much to the show. Other things with the network coming up. We got the Southlands campaign is coming together. We've had some requests in the Discord for kind of input from patrons, which I love that idea. I almost just spilled my water bottle on my computer. That would have been bad. They suggested to allow patrons, or we'll say of a certain tier, I think it'll be $5 and up, can help create NPCs. I've got a big list already. The whole point of this campaign is going to be is homebrewed by me. Will be a Patreon-only podcast and video, probably show, where they're going to go to the Southlands working as part of an expedition to establish a new imperial colony. So the expedition's got to have a lot of people. It's got to have a lot of NPCs. I've made up, I don't know, 24 so far, a whole bunch. Let me run through my list really quick of what is involved. I'm not going to go over all the characters exactly, but I want to talk about... let's see, we have, it's led by the daughter of an elector count trying to establish a new area for her province. She's the daughter of Countess Emmanuel of Nuln to try to expand the realm of Wissenland, just in a different continent. She is bringing a high-level bright wizard, a court advisor, a trusted captain of the guard, 36 men-at-arms, a painter, a cartographer, 3 carpenters with an additional 7 workers, 2 halfling cooks with 8 human sous chefs, 3 dwarf artisan or engineers, 4 dwarf miners, a wood elf scout, a high elf diplomat skilled in many languages, an ogre man-eater mercenary, 4 lumberjacks from Ostland, an apothecary, a physician, a priest of Sigmar, Moor, Tal, and Shalea, and then 2 dwarf slayers have joined in for a chance of glorious death in a foreign land. not a small cast. So I love the idea of NPC or of patrons helping to come up with NPCs. So basically and then of course anything else out in the Southlands, where if people in the Discord or on the Patreon wanted to talk to me directly or email back and forth kind of thing, we can talk about, maybe you don't want to make an NPC that is part of the expedition, maybe you want an NPC that's already in the Southlands in some capacity. It could be a lizard man or something else. There are lots of I've come up with a few things that are going to be there already, so we could talk about that. And I will of course give that person credit. But this is going to be a Patreon only podcast video. So patron, another the whole point is to be incentive for people to join the Patreon, of course. So patrons at the $5 level and up can submit ideas for NPCs to help work with me to develop this story more. I plan on it being a relatively long-term campaign. At this point, I have events or like places that can lead to events in the Southlands. Let's see, A through L at this point. So, what's that, like 12 or so? I'm not going to count them right this second, but I've got a lot of plans. I'm taking stuff from all over the place. A few weeks ago, I asked in one of the Warhammer Facebook groups, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Facebook groups, for ideas, and people pointed me to there was a third edition doc in the group files. Somebody made up all about the Southlands, which obviously all the rules I can't use because it's third edition, but I'm taking some ideas from that. There was one, I think his name is Ben Scurry, I don't know how to pronounce it, who I think works for Cubicle 7 now, has a blog where he got to make stuff up like that, and he has a whole bunch of information about the Southlands that I'm going to be taking some things from, and I just want to make this super cool. And eventually, as we go through it, eventually I will make the adventure itself, once it gets to a point where I feel like it's more or less done being written, I'm going to make it available for patrons as well to download, and they potentially run themselves if they want. So really, really excited about this. I've already put probably, I don't even know how many hours into developing it so far. Taylor's going to be helping me with it. He really, really wanted to play in it, but wasn't quite able to make it work, unfortunately, which is too bad, but life. He's going to be helping me develop the campaign as well. So really, really excited about this. So look for that coming in the next few months, probably. Still need a name for it. I've just been calling it the Southlands Campaign. Maybe that's what it'll be called, I don't know. But I'm excited to get some original content. I absolutely adore The Enemy Within. I haven't read it all yet. I'm most of the way through Power Behind the Throne since that came out just before Christmas. I never had access to the original one from the first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So I don't know the whole story yet, which I really want to, but I know Cubicle 7 is working hard to get those out. They should have that complete well before the end of the year, which at the rate we're going will be plenty of time. Because if it takes 40-ish episodes to get through the first book, that means we'll be, I assume at least as much for Death on the Reich, if not more. Because that book is quite expansive and a lot going on. So I'm predicting 40 to 50 episodes for Death on the Reich, which, as you know, would be almost a year anyway. So I'll have access to the rest of the campaign before that happens. Really, really looking forward to that, to see where all this thing goes. It's all new? What do you mean it's all going to be new after Power Behind the Throne? Well, I know there's Children of the Horned Rat, or is it not Children of the Horned? The Horned Rat, right, is the fourth one, and then Empire in Ruins. Are they totally changing those for 4th edition? Because I thought that it was just kind of, they call it the director's cut versions, where it's the original writers like Graham Davis are kind of tweaking things and taking in feedback they've gotten over the 30 years this campaign has been out. Are they drastically changing things for the last 2 book? Because I don't remember seeing that anywhere. Which, to me, it would, I wouldn't know the difference because I don't know the 1st edition versions. They're brand new. What? Interesting. I know they had to change some things. I do remember seeing something about they had to change a big part of the end of Empire in Ruin because how the lore around Emperor Karl Franz has changed over the years. Oh, something rotten in Kislev. I thought that was something separate, but again, my knowledge on that is thin. Okay. Interesting. So they're totally changing the end of the adventure? Huh. Well, I mean, what I've seen from Cubicle 7 so far, I trust them to do a great job with it. So I'm really excited for that. Um, are they just because I know they changed the names a little bit here and there, where like the first adventure before was called Shadows over Bogenhofen, and this version was called Enemy Sha- Enemy and Shadows. There we go. Sebastian said it's going to be more in line with how they wanted it to end originally. Okay, I mean that makes sense. I don't know the whole story behind that, why it's going to be, um, why they're changing it so much, but because from what I understand, the whole campaign is just like the most beloved thing out there. But I know there's certainly complaints because nothing is perfect. But I know, for the most part, people really really love the Enemy Within in general. So I'll be really excited to see what those differences are and why they changed it. Because I don't really know, but I'm looking really looking forward to that. I've heard that the last two books of it are really crazy, and I mean it's kind of like high level play in a way because by then the characters will have thousands of experience probably. So you have to come up. Yeah, I mean for fights you have to be against pretty strong things for the characters to be where they're at. I mean if you got a wizard, they're going to be a master wizard or wizard potentially wizard lord by that point, so they're going to be pretty strong. But yeah, so next week, the plan right now is for Danny's going to be joining me, first guest on the show. And we're going to talk about Skaven because she played Skaven a bit. She's never really been into gaming stuff a lot, like never really into it like I get. But she enjoyed it back in the day. She loved the lore behind Skaven. She thought they were super fun, which is why she chose them. So she actually asked, like, can I be on the show with you? I mean, we do it in my basement, so no problem. In the future, guests will be an irregular thing. It's not going to be like every episode will be a different guest, but it'll be here and there. I think Taylor's wanted to be part of it when I go over ogres because he loves the ogres. Thinking about trying to ask my brother if he'll join me for the dwarf episode. I think that's 2 weeks. I'm not positive, but if his work schedule doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. So we'll see. But that's the plan for right now. That all depends on, mostly depends on if my dad's around and can watch the kids for us. I asked him yesterday, and he's like, well, I was going to go out and hang out with the guys, but, we'll see about the time. He's like, we'll talk about it more when it gets closer. And I was like, it's not really an answer. But okay, it wasn't a no, so I'll take it. But it's because we only need it for like an hour. So really looking forward to that. It's going to be super fun. We'll probably get off topic all the time. So be ready in the chat to be like, I thought this was supposed to be about Skaven, not you guys, whatever. So really looking forward to that. Other stuff from Professional Casual. I want to go over the weekly schedule real quick. First up, Monday. Oh, I guess first up, Sunday. Technically, most people think the week starts with Monday. Here, my fact person is coming out. Sundays we start with with the show, right? Every Sunday at 3. I don't see anything coming up in the near future that might derail that. Hopefully, we can stick with that. And then Monday we have Lost Omens podcast. Sorry, if you search like on iTunes, I search on iTunes regularly to check to see if we have new ratings or reviews or whatever. You have to search the Lost Omens podcast, or else it gets buried by other things that have the word lost in it, which is ridiculous. So search the Lost Omens podcast. Danny runs she runs a tight ship playing Pathfinder 2. We're playing through the Extinction Curse. Super fun. If you want to laugh, it's a great show for that. If you want to learn Pathfinder, we're learning it too, so it's a great show for that as well. And then Monday night, of course, we have the Power Phase. We're playing Marvel Crisis Protocol. Tomorrow I am playing A-Force with She-Hulk against Tim with his Black Order, Thanos, and a couple others. I forget who he's taking. Black Dwarf and Proxima Midnight, I think. I don't remember. Should be a good one. Should be a real beat down episode because we got some big heavy hitters. Tuesday is currently kind of an off day. Was when we were releasing The Space Between, which you can always go back and check out our deep dives into The Mandalorian and what we do before that. The Boys Season 2, we talked about some comics on there. We have Final Fantasy VIII episodes where we go over that game, me and Tim, that we recorded months ago, but he just doesn't want to put them up, and I don't know why, so I'm going to call him out. Get those episodes up. We have one more to do about the last disc, and we just never did it. I think that's why he hasn't put them up yet, because it's not done, but we have it ready in the can. We might be covering WandaVision on that show. I don't know. Tim is very non-committal about that because the network already takes up a ton of time, and doing another show is very difficult to fit in our schedule. Wednesday is Patreon Day, where we just load up the Patreon with tons of stuff every week. This past week was the end of the first run of our regular coverage of my game, The Paul. The Paul. It almost sounded like I said Nepal. It's an RPG I'm creating set in the world of my book, Lainey the Girl Without Fear, that you can get on Amazon. And the podcast version of this show goes up there on Wednesdays. And then we have weekly vlogs. Danny does book reviews every time she finishes a new book. Big Chuck throws up some high-octane stuff, usually about wrestling or other games or movies and things, kind of whatever he feels like talking about. It's super fun to watch. Tim gives States of the Union here and there, where he talks about what's going on with the network. If there's anything new coming up, he'll kind of like his own little recap thing, shows off models he's gotten painted, because he doesn't paint them himself because he didn't like it, which, whatever. Thursday is the big day for me personally, because it's the Grim Podcast of Perilous Adventure Day, which I really look forward to hearing what people think in the Discord and in the spoiler chat for that. People that are caught up talk about. Often it's yelling at me for something horrible I did to the players. And then Friday is the Elite 8 Showdown Day with Big Chuck and Tim, where they do an 8-subject single elimination bracket covering anything and everything under the sun. The last week was Pet Peeves, which was really funny. I left a lot of that one. It was pretty good. Tim goes on a couple tirades. I was actually surprised at how little they talked about me, because they tend to bring up complaints about me in regular shows, so I expected a whole entry to be stuff that I do that makes them mad. I wasn't there. I was actually pleasantly surprised. They were nicer than usual. And then Saturday is a break day. I think that we're going to keep, the plan is to keep that open. But we like to throw something at you whenever we can, to give people content that they love. And so we're on Twitch. I always forget to remind at the beginning. Twitch Prime. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you get one free subscription to a Twitch channel in that bundle of Amazon Prime stuff that most people don't know about. You can use that to be a subscriber here. Click that little notification button so you see when we're going live. Sometimes the titles aren't right. I'm pretty sure today it's saying that I'm playing Marvel Crisis Protocol, because that's what we did last, even though I can see on my screen I updated it. Apparently it didn't take. I'm pretty sure there's a button I have to press to update information. That's why. Now it's updated. I just clicked it. Totally forgot to do that because I didn't scroll down. So yeah. Dang it, because I even changed the category to Warhammer, hoping to get some more people in, but, I'm learning. All right, so next week, we're talking about Skaven. Hopefully Danny will be able to join me. I can't wait for that. This week's going to fly by. So excited. Can't wait to see what happens in our podcast coming up as well. Other than that, I'm going to say thanks for joining. However it is that you're listening, whether you're live, whether you're watching on YouTube 2 weeks later, or whether you're listening to this podcast version on the Patreon, thank you so much for listening. And always feel free to let me know what you think. Give me some feedback. Give me some requests. Give me some questions. You can always email theprofessionalcasual@gmail.com, or check us out on facebook.com/professionalcasual. Let us know. You can tag us in a tweet at Top Tier Casual if you got anything you want me to cover, or questions you want me to answer, or potentially not answer if they're questions like Bastion asks. Alrighty, I'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.